Welcome to the Story Nerd podcast, Hook Your Reader episode. This is where we give authors professional advice about their query letters and the first 10 pages writing samples. I am Kathleen Fox, and I'm a literary agent with the Rights Factory in Toronto and a freelance editor at Fox Editorial.
And I'm Valerie Francis. I'm a writer and a story editor, and I teach women who are writing in all genres how stories work so they can finish their books faster and without frustration.
On today's episode, we're reviewing an upmarket speculative thriller story from Victoria Barber. It takes a lot of guts for writers to send in their work and have it reviewed publicly, but it shows that they're willing to step out and bet on themselves, and we're happy to help. So, Victoria, thank you very much for sharing your pages and your query and for giving us all an opportunity to learn. Before we get started, we would love it if you could help other writers find our show by leaving a rating and a review. For Apple Podcast listeners, you can do it right from your phone. Simply go to the show's landing page and scroll to the bottom. It is that simple. And if you're watching us on YouTube, please hit like and subscribe so you never miss an episode.
Alrighty. Now, I'm going to read the query letter, but before I do that, full disclosure here, Victoria Barber is a friend of mine. So I happen to know she's a good writer. She's a great storyteller. You want to go out and have a cup of coffee with her. She's got lots of great stories. Now, I have not read this book, and I don't know the whole plot or anything like that. She's been holding it close, keeping her cards close to her chest. But I will promise you that the comments that I give today are objective because that is the beauty of story theory. This is why I love story theory. It enables us to be objective when examining something that is by nature highly subjective, like art, like our own stories, or like the stories of our friends. All right. With that caveat, here's Victoria's query letter. Dear Kathleen, I've read on your manuscript wish list that you are seeking light speculative fiction, our world with one or two differences, as well as historical fiction and thriller. I feel my novel is a great fit for your interests, and I hope you will consider my query below. What if Kate Middleton had been a police officer before marrying into the royal family, an unlikely duchess with secrets and skills hidden beneath the tiara? What if Queen Victoria had been the victim of a serial killer before her reign, rewriting history and reshaping the royal lineage forever? And what would this Duchess detective do when a misstep in time forces her to choose between saving Victoria and preserving the future she desperately wants to return to? A Life to Lose is an 80,000-word upmarket speculative thriller, part The Crown, part Criminal Minds, and part Outlander, exploring time travel, moral complexity, and a woman torn between two worlds. Inspired by the idea of a woman like Kate Middleton with a police officer's background, my protagonist is a unique character navigating high-stakes choices that transcend time. I hold a degree in history and am an independently published author of 11 novels, known for crafting immersive worlds and emotionally charged character-driven stories. Best known for my romance series set against the rugged backdrop of Newfoundland, and as a contributor to a USA Today bestselling anthology, this novel marks a creative leap into speculative fiction, blending my passion for history with suspenseful thriller elements. A Life to Lose was born from targeted research trips fueled by the mystery of the Exmoor landscape and reflects my fascination with the intricate dance between time, choice, and consequence. This is the first in a multi-book series. Thank you for your time and consideration. I am seeking a champion for my story, and as noted above, given your wish list, I sincerely believe this novel could be a fit for you. I'd be happy to send the full manuscript at your request. Sincerely, Victoria Barber. All righty, Kathleen. What are your thoughts on Victoria's query letter?
Yeah, so first, I liked that there was personalization right away. I always like to see that in a query letter. It just gives the agent kind of an idea of why they're querying you. Have they met you at a webinar? Have they met you, or sorry, not, have they attended a webinar? Have they met you at a conference? Is it just that you've found something on their wish list that you like? So just kind of try and make that connection. I do also like to see strong, confident language in a query letter. And I'm not saying this isn't strong and confident. Overall, it is. The only thing that I would suggest is that instead of saying something like, I hope that you will consider my query, say, I'm confident that my XYZ story will meet your wish list or something like that. I'm excited to submit my XYZ story. So yeah, very, very minor. Now, when we get to the next part, so this is where I'm expecting to see plot paragraphs. And instead, what I'm reading feels to me like a bunch of different log lines, and they spark curiosity in themselves, but there's not enough plot details, right? So what I'm looking for and what other agents are looking for is an introduction to the main character, what their norm is before the inciting incident, what that inciting incident is that sends them on this big journey they're about to go on, what they want, their goal, who or what is standing in their way, so the conflict or the antagonistic force, and stakes. I really want to know what's at stake. So I mean, you can see sort of on a surface level these elements, but there's just I think we need more plot details. So what I'm reading here is something that might capture initial interest and make the agent say, "Ooh, tell me more." But the query letter should be the part that is telling me more. When it comes to comps, I personally like to see 2 book comps. I mean, you can. I am all for using like some kind of media, other media, like a film, a show, even a song or an album or something like that, if it's really, really, if it makes sense to do that. But the reason we want comps is because those strong comps will help an editorial team at a publisher that we submit this to make their decision. Because you're writing a book, it has to be marketed like a book. So there's 2 shows here, and I at the same time, in saying all of that, like I still think that they're good comps, but I think like we have Outlander, and that's the book, and it's also a show. But yeah, I'll get into that a little bit more too. Like when you have like Outlander for me is personally a great comp because I love Outlander. Anyone who knows me knows I love Outlander. And like as soon as you say Outlander, you know it's going to have something to do with time travel and it's going to have something to do with in the past, right? So this is a great eye catch for me. And just as an aside, just in saying that, and I'm not saying that has happened here, but don't use a big comp just to capture the attention of an agent that you think will like it. It has to make sense. In this case, I think it does make sense. But there are some different schools of thought on using these huge blockbuster titles. So those are awfully big shoes to fill. If you were a debut novelist, obviously you're not because you have a lot of other books under your belt. But just for those of us who are out there who have not got that publishing experience under your belt, yeah, very, very big shoes to fill, and everybody wants to think they're the next Outlander, the next Stephen King. But those hugely, hugely successful books are very rare when it comes to, like, when you think about the amount of books that are out there. So you kind of want to reach not so high, and this sounds awful, but it's the reality of it, right? Like not everybody has a book that's going to be like Outlander. So you want to try and show comps that are a little bit more reasonable within reach. So those are still books that have sold well, but uh, that's kind of one school of thought. The other thing is that sometimes it really just makes sense to use a big book or big title. And I do kind of get that with this one because of the elements that are present. There is time travel and there is that mysterious vibe that we get, and I'll get more into that when we get to the pages. So I do think in this case it is appropriate, but I would add that you should add a book that is not as big as Outlander. And that perhaps showcases a different element, not the time travel aspect. So something I noticed in the metadata paragraph, so that's all of the book details, which I think should be moved up to the top to that introductory paragraph. The themes should be woven into the plot paragraphs. They don't need to be directly stated. You can sneak themes into the metadata area because you can use your comps if you're going to comp like a specific theme, but I wouldn't directly state my book has this theme, this theme, this theme. Those should be very evident in the plot paragraphs, how they're written. And there's a line there that states that this is the first in a multi-book series. I would take that out and just add that to the metadata paragraph and just say that it has strong potential for a series. Because in the eyes of a publisher, it isn't a series until the first book sells well. So we just want to focus on that first book for now. But stating that it has series potential shows an agent that you have many more books in store. Usually we're looking for career authors, so that it just tells us that you have other ideas that are stewing, right? And let's see, that final paragraph has also been stated in the introduction. So I would remove that and just insert a call to action. May I send you the full manuscript? And I think that's it for me.
Okay. You've already touched on a couple of the questions I had. So it is a format change or a alternate version, I guess, than we typically see. So I was curious to hear what you'd say about that. I was curious to hear your take on Victoria's comment that this is the first in a series. So best to say that it's series potential. Now, I do have a question, and this is not specific to Victoria's query letter or anybody's query letter. It's just a question I have, and this is as good a time as any to ask it. And it's about AI, our favorite topic. So my question is this. Should authors offer an AI disclaimer in their query letters, either saying that they have or have not used generative AI or a large language model, and if they have used it, to what extent? Because I know when you go into Query Tracker, there's a little, they have a specific question, most agents. Did you use AI in the creation of this book? Click yes or no. But you're not always using Query Tracker. Some agents prefer to be queried directly. So in those cases where you're querying an agent directly, should you put in a little AI disclaimer?
That is an excellent question. I don't think it can hurt, that's for sure. I wouldn't say that it is at the level yet where it's a requirement. But you're right, like in my query manager, I do have a question about that, whether they've used AI or not. Excuse me. I do some of my editorial business on Readsy, and they have recently implemented a question that potential clients have to answer about AI. Have you used AI to in the creation of this manuscript? And they have to answer. And some of them will go into detail about, I've used it for this and not this, and I would never use AI, or yep, this is fully AI. And I state that I don't want to work on books that have used generative AI because I don't want my name associated with that personally. It's not something that I believe in. When you're creating a book, it's creating. AI doesn't create, it generates. And we've talked about AI in a previous episode, and we could probably talk for like 5 whole episodes on it. But yeah, my general rule of thumb is I prefer not to work on books that have used generative AI. So just getting back to your question, I think it's not a bad idea to have that in there. It's not a requirement as of right now, but I think just given the way that everything's kind of going with AI and how controversial it is, it's not a bad idea to put that in there.
And I would think that even if it's not in there, the question is going to be asked on any offer call, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
An agent's going to want to get that clear really quickly, I would think. Okay. Now, since I know Victoria, I think it makes sense, Kathleen, for you to start talking about the sample pages and giving her your feedback.
Yeah. Um, so when we get into the opening pages, my interest is definitely piqued. I knew that going into it though, because because there was the comp of Outlander, which is an immediate, oh my goodness, for me. Um, as long as I can see that it is relevant in those plot paragraphs. So um, I'm feeling like what she saw with, this crime scene that she comes across, the blood, the ring in the groves that she hadn't noticed before. I'm wondering if that is the time slip that is being referred to in the query letter. It feels that way. It's mysterious, and I like that kind of eeriness. Um, I have all kinds of questions floating around my head by the time I get to the 10th page, and they are born of curiosity, not out of confusion, which is very good. Overall, I think the opening pages are written very well. There's a flow to them. I felt more grounded after the first page, but I'll come right back to that. I can visualize this scene in my head. Um, I feel like it's beautiful, and I want to be there. I would love to be in these beautiful rolling hills. So it's good that I can visualize things. She's giving us enough details there. We know that there's something going on with the king, so that's interesting. We don't know exactly what has happened to James, but and I know that our listeners haven't read these pages, but there's all kinds of information there, and it's written in a way that flows really well. So I'm curious
And I
about what
just want to
happened.
say,
Oh yeah,
sorry to interrupt. I just want to say you said our listeners haven't read the pages, but they can read the pages if they are on my
right.
mailing list.
Yes,
ValerieFrancis.ca/inner circle. Anyway, just
yes,
go.
exactly.
Please continue.
um, so Yeah, so regarding James, when we first got introduced to him by name, I didn't know who he was, but it quickly became apparent that is her husband, and he's obviously no longer with us. But she doesn't give us that information, which I think is good because now we're curious about what happened to James, and why she's still a Duchess. Why is she still stuck in that situation? Um, so yeah, I'm very super curious about all kinds of things. I want to know what happened to the crime scene. You've established her as a very capable, um, competent and intelligent person who used to be a detective. She has strong skills in that area, strong instincts, and now she's caught off guard and wondering what happened to the crime scene that she just stumbled upon. So that, it's a contrast to what we've already known about her within just a few pages. I like that kind of mysteriousness, the feeling pulled in that direction in an area of the property that she doesn't usually go to. So I'm wondering if there's some kind of a light supernatural ability going on there. So yeah, by the time we get to the end there, I would absolutely want to keep reading at this point, but I just encourage adding some details and clarity specifically to the first page. I mentioned before that I didn't feel quite as grounded in that first page, and I really want to be. So yeah, that's what's missing for me on that first page. I'm not quite sure where we are. I don't know as deeply what the scene looks like than I do later on. I know there's blood on trees and things like that, but yeah, I'm just not quite visualizing it as strongly as I can further along. So there's, a little bit of not sarcasm, but the line about her, it might be her father-in-law, and she's talking about poaching, so maybe it's not a crime scene. So there's just a titch of humor there, which I liked. Um, it didn't feel super clear to me. Now I know from the query that she is a detective, but she's also a duchess. But it wasn't super clear to me that she's a duchess and a detective on the first page. There's a line that states she hasn't done this in a long time, but there's a familiar feeling. So she knows what she's doing, but she should, given where she is in life right now, she should be finalizing this menu for a party that she doesn't even want to go to. Um, so I'm wondering if she was an actual detective inspector. Did she give that up for this extravagant lifestyle? Like what happened there? But by the time we get to the end of the first chapter, we know more details. We know there's a possible crime that's occurred. We know that she did used to be a detective. She was good at what she did. She trusts her old partner, even if there's some old wounds between them. It seems that she isn't super keen on this new life. She wishes she could go back to doing what she loves. It's very clear, like in just her actions and her thoughts, that she really is good at it, and she wishes that she could still be doing that. The gold ring that comes up, readers will be curious about that. Like, she sees it and we see what she sees, and then that's it. So obviously there's something going on there. So far this feels like more of a mystery to me in these opening pages. There's a lot of mystery things going on, right? The vibe, the location, revealing an important clue, the detectives. So yeah, but I think the first page could just use a little bit more detail and clarity for grounding purposes. And then there's almost like this imperceptible shift once you get to the second page, like there's more clarity present and more details. Yeah, so I mentioned not understanding who James was at first, but that's the thing. Like, when you put something like that in there and then you very quickly answer it, that's good, because you know that the reader is wondering that, and so you're anticipating where they're going to have that question, and then you give them that answer. Well, those are the, like, a little curiosity seed or a breadcrumb, and then giving them another little piece of the puzzle. So we find out quickly who James is. We don't yet know what happened to him. So he's dead. Who knows what happened? I assume that we'll find out pretty quickly in the next few pages. Um, but that is one thing that I want to state. Sometimes I've read manuscripts where a piece of information is given, like a little tiny puzzle piece, but there's no more puzzle pieces given. It's referred to, but no, like, we're not any further ahead in figuring something out, and that can cause a lot of frustration. So you have to make sure that you're dropping those little hints or clues as you go along, so that the reader can theorize and not just constantly wonder, well, why, and then, like, 20 chapters later we finally get to the answer. Um, the other thing that I liked, there was there were subtle notes of clashing between her old life and her new life, and comparing the two, and her partner being here is kind of bringing back those memories of her old life. And I think it was 4 years ago that she stopped being a detective, if I'm reading that right. So it's not that long ago, so she still has all those memories fresh in her head. But there's an obvious level of comfort between these two ex-partners, right? Um, I think you pronounce his name Reese, if I'm correct. So Reese and Alex, um, there's that line that mentions that nobody walks in front of her anymore unless they're a senior royal, and he walks in front of her. So there's that obvious closeness there, and a kind of a, it's not necessary to follow protocol here because we have that level, that bond, I guess. So I like their dynamic, and I wonder how that's going to be, like how Reese is going to be involved later on, if he's going to be involved, because if there's time travel involved, like, will he still be a part of the story? I don't know yet, but I do like their dynamic together. Um, yeah, and I think I've gone over everything that I picked up on. But yeah, by the end of the 10th page, it turns very mysterious, and I definitely want to figure out what is going on. And I think that it has something to do with that time slip, which is exciting to me.
Okay, so just for the benefit of listeners, Kathleen and I do not discuss the query letters or the submission pages before we get on these calls. Our thoughts and our feedback are developed completely independently. And this is the same thing that Melanie and I do on, the regular Story Nerd episodes where we're talking about the craft. So I'm always curious to see if we're going to hit upon the same things or not. And more often than not, Melanie and I do. And in this case, Kathleen and I have, which is really interesting to me. You mentioned James, and I had the same reaction first when the name appeared on the page. I didn't know who it was. Now, my recommendation would be to, when you're introducing a new character, to explain who they are immediately. Because, like, not even wait to the end of the paragraph. Because when a reader comes across a name that they haven't seen before, it interrupts the story flow in their mind because they're thinking, oh, wait, did I miss something? Who is this? And they'll start flipping back through the pages to see if they've missed something. And you never want to give a reader any reason to stop because they might not start again. like like the task before a novelist is so much bigger than most people realize. And if you just really pay close attention to your own reading habits, like you as a reader, and see when you're losing interest in a story, when you're getting really interested in a story, books that you put down, how long does it take you to pick them back up again? Are you thinking about the story between reading sessions? When do you read? Is it on your morning commute? Is it in the tub? Are you getting just little couple of pages here, a couple of pages there? Like, the more you look at your own reading habits and talk to your reader friends and ask them questions about their reading habits, the more you begin to understand just how challenging it is to get someone's attention and to hold it. So my recommendation would be, when you introduce a new character, explain who they are right away so that there's no risk of the reader feeling confused. I also had the same thoughts about exposition, which I'll talk about in a minute. But I want to start on a note about the genre and the opening line. Okay, so the genre. From these pages, I'm expecting a crime thriller, right? Even if I hadn't read the query letter and I didn't read the back cover blurb, these opening pages, I'm expecting a crime thriller, which, like a murder mystery, has to do with discovering who committed the crime, which is, in this case, a murder. Now, the difference between murder mysteries and crime thrillers for me is this. When I think of a murder mystery, that to me is a cozy mystery, like an Agatha Christie or an Anthony Horowitz, where the emphasis is on the puzzle. Like, these are literary puzzles. Crime thrillers are a bit grittier, right? For example, here we have quite a big description of and a focus on blood. You don't tend to get that in a cozy. And thrillers also have more nuanced characters. Now, in saying that, I am not in any way slighting the characters of a cozy mystery. Cozies are, I think, one of my all-time favorite genres. So I'm absolutely not going to poo-poo on them in any way, shape, or form. But they're a different type of character than a thriller has. So from these opening pages, I am more thinking of a crime thriller than a cozy. So by the end of the book, I am expecting to know who or what died, how they died, why they died, who killed them, and also why Alex couldn't find the crime scene when Reese arrived. Now, I'm sure by the end of the book, we'll find all this out. I have no idea, though, because I only have these opening pages. Even though she's a friend of mine, I don't know any more about this story than Kathleen knows, or that my mailing list subscribers will know, because they will have gotten a copy of this. My point is this. From these opening pages, I have a lot of questions that I want to find the answers to. And the only way I'll get those answers is by reading the book all the way to the end. Now, this is a genre that has compelling questions baked into it, and it has narrative drive baked into it. I am not for a second suggesting that they're easier to write, because, as a writer, you still need to know what you're doing. But because a crime thriller, or a cozy, or a romance for that matter, they have these elements already baked into the genre, readers are naturally drawn toward them, and they therefore tend to be bigger sellers. Okay. Now I want to talk about the opening line, because Kathleen and I have already talked about what is or is not a killer opening line. I think, Kathleen, that this is what I would call a killer opening line. Why do I say that? It's not because Victoria's my friend. It's because, as a reader, I am curious to read more. And that is the function of an opening line. It's to get your reader to read the second sentence. It really is. And in order to read the second sentence, they've got to be curious about something. So here is Victoria's opening line. Quote, "There's something about the scent of blood." That's it. It's short. It's sweet. You can kind of read the whole sentence just by looking at it. You don't have to read one word at a time. You just look at the sentence and you can kind of read it because there's not that many words. It catches the reader's, well, one, the reader doesn't have to work very hard to read it because you can just kind of look at the whole phrase and absorb it all at once. It's not like an opening sentence that's 3 or 4 or 5 lines long. But it also catches the reader's attention because it's a bit odd, right? It's ambiguous and it raises questions in my mind, and questions that, as we've already talked about many times, and I'm confident we will talk about many more times, Kathleen, questions that are arising because of curiosity, not confusion. So the questions that were popping into my mind immediately are, this something, is it good or is it bad? Who is this character? Is it a protagonist or an antagonist? If it's a protagonist, is this an anti-hero or somebody else? What kind of person ruminates about the scent of blood? And whose blood? Right? There's a lot of questions in my mind that I'm curious about, so I'm going to read on to see if I get the answers. Just those questions, that is enough to get someone to read the next sentence and get them to read to the end of the opening paragraph. So, yay. Now, one comment that I want to make about the opening paragraph, and what I'm going to say, it is advanced stuff. And the reason I'm saying it is not to nitpick here. It's because I know Victoria is a good writer and I know she's ready for a challenge. And because the fix is actually really easy. My comment here is about point of view. Now, point of view is a topic that, believe it or not, very few writers understand. I know that sounds bizarre, and people listening to this might be disagreeing with me, and that's fine. Again, I could talk for an hour and explain to you why most people don't understand point of view, but I don't have time for that right now. So you're just going to have to take my word for it or do your own study. Point of view is one of those storytelling things, especially for novelists, that it seems so basic. First person, second person, third person. Most people go, yep, got it, and they move on. It seems really, really basic. But in fact, it is highly nuanced. And it's further complicated by the fact that in our business, we don't have a standardized way of talking about point of view or understanding point of view. So here's my thought about the opening paragraph. It reads like it's first person. It is clearly the thoughts of a character that, like, we are in this character's mind. That's why it feels like first person. And it's working, right? Because it's compelling. The problem, if I want to use the word problem, comes in the second paragraph when the point of view switches to third person. Now, it is close third person, so we're clearly going to, throughout this book, hear the thoughts of this character. But there's a clear narrator introduced in the second paragraph, and that narrator wasn't there in the first paragraph, so it's a bit of a jerky motion that is really easy to fix. Okay, here's the fix. In the opening paragraph, you introduce the narrator, and you do it early, maybe even in the second sentence, and it is simple to do. So you could write something like this. Here's my little attempt at it. There's something about the scent of blood, the inescapable bitter tang of iron that hangs in the air and that stayed in Alex's nose no matter how much menthol or lavender oil she used. Such a simple fix. Now, Victoria can spend more time and, wordsmith it more than I did. But my point here is that by introducing the main character so early, you actually have an opportunity here to strengthen the story in two different ways. First of all, you keep a consistent point of view, right? By making it third person close right from the beginning. Second, you're introducing the main character right away by name and gender. We know the name is Alex and it's a she because it's the lavender oil she used. Such a small thing can make a huge, big difference. The other thing I wanted to talk about is becoming my favorite topic, Kathleen, when it comes to opening pages, and it's exposition. I'm just going to say, exposition, exposition, exposition. It'll just be a theme every single week. And basically what I'm going to say, Kathleen, is what you said. In these 10 pages, Victoria really does give us all the information we need, like the who, the what, the where, and the when. However, I wanted just a little bit more of it on the first page to give me a chance to enter that fictional world as quickly as possible. So, for example, in the second paragraph, there's reference to yet another extravagant and pointless dinner party. And Kathleen, you picked up on that as well. Well, if you just used an adjective, one small adjective could let the reader know when this story takes place, right? Like on page 4, there's a reference to, quote, the crisp October air. Okay, so we have to wait 4 pages to even find out what time of year it is. This could easily be referenced on the first page. So, for example, if the dinner party was in honor of, a harvest or something, the reader could be anchored in time. Like in Canada, we celebrate Thanksgiving in October. So if the story took place in Canada, it could be the Thanksgiving dinner. And right away, we know exactly when it is. It's the fall of the year. Now, I don't know what's going on in England, in Somerset in October. There must be some reference that can be used. And if there isn't, you could make reference, for example, to the fact that it's 2 months to Christmas. Or when Victoria is describing the blood on the ground, she could reference the color of the leaves or the frozen ground if the ground freezes in Somerset in October. In Newfoundland, it's frozen. And it stays frozen for a really long time. I don't know. We are recording in May, and I have to say today was 18 degrees. Alleluia. Praise the little baby Jesus. There is still some snow on the ground, but it's finally warming up. Anyway, I honestly don't know in Somerset if the ground would be frozen in October, but you understand what I'm getting at. Those little touches that are really small edits on the first page, just including a little more information to things that are already there, are opportunities to ground your reader so quickly. And the faster you get your reader into your fictional world and into your story, the better. Such is the power of exposition. So at the bottom of page 1, there is a phrase, quote, she took in the scene with all the scrutiny of a seasoned crime scene investigator. All right, so this is another opportunity where Victoria can use some exposition and a little bit of description to help the reader enter the world. What is the scene? Tell me a little bit more to help me visualize what's happening, to help me as the reader see what you as the writer are seeing. So I don't think they're huge edits. I really don't. I think they're tweaks that can be easily done. And these are the types of things that when you're reading your own manuscript is so easy to miss because you know it. And you've read this thing 1,000 times and you've been working on it for maybe a couple of years. So you just don't even notice that they're not there. So if you're in a writing group, share your first 10 pages and or with reader friends who have no idea what your story is about. And then ask them pointed questions after. Do you know who my main character is? Do you know where the story takes place and when the story takes place? Do you know what's at stake? Not necessarily at stake for the whole story, because the global inciting incident doesn't have to be in the first scene. But do you have any idea of what could be at stake for the character? Those simple questions. You can have a checklist that you give your writer friends or maybe your reader friends, and that can really help strengthen your work and help you see things that you're not seeing anymore because you're so close to the work, which as writers is inevitable. It's going to happen to every single one of us. It's the only way that I know to get the distance is either to give it to someone who has never seen it before and ask for their feedback, or to stick it in a drawer for 6 months. And no one wants to do that. As a writer, I don't want to do that. But that's the only those are the only two strategies I have. Okay, Kathleen, final advice for Victoria moving forward.
Yeah, you know what? Just on that note, I think I might have a list of questions that I send out to some of my clients about what to ask beta readers. I'm gonna have to dig that up. Yeah, so for the query letter, we definitely need some more plot details. It is, I mean, not every agent will be like obsessed with Outlander. I mean, for me personally, that's what draws me into it, and I want to read more. But I still would want to see more plot details. And if I, wasn't an Outlander fan, I don't know that I would get to the pages because there's just not enough information in that query letter. And it's so important to get them to the pages. So make sure that query letter has some more plot details. Yeah, definitely a lot of aspects there that captured and held my interest in the pages. So yeah, you definitely you want them to get to those pages because I think that they're fantastic.
Awesome. And again, what I would say is just a bit more exposition in the opening pages. And when you're introducing characters, my advice would be to explain who they are immediately so you don't risk confusing your reader at all.
Yep, I agree. Okay, I think that wraps it up for the week. If you want us to look at your work, visit storynerd.ca for details on how to submit. To support the show, please leave us a rating and review and tell your writer friends about us. And if you're watching on YouTube, be sure to like and subscribe. To get copies of the query letters and writing samples we feature on the show, join Valerie's Inner Circle at valeriefrancis.ca/inner circle. And to find out more about my agent wish list or what services I offer as an editor, visit KathleenFoxAgent.com and FoxEditorial.com. And remember, Fox has 2 X's. And remember, story theory doesn't have to be difficult. It's a tool to help you write more, not less. So take it one step at a time and have fun.